Thanks for coming today, guys. We're going to focus on something that I really enjoy, which is Wristlocks. For those of you that don't know me, I think I've met everybody, but just in case. So Tom McMahon, I'm out of Alliance, Minnesota, black belt, and I've been able to train with James and come to this gym many, many times, and so it's an honor for me to be back here and sharing some of the things I like to do with you guys. Sponsored by Vinny Vici Fight Co, so if you're interested in seeing me after, we can talk about that. I want to talk today about Wristlocks. So Wristlocks are something that I think are really, really underutilized. In IBJJF, it's blue belt and above, but in any other area, it's legal to use. So on the street, so Tudo, no gi, gi, they're very, very effective self-defense as well. And I'll share a little story of why I like them. So when I started martial arts, I started in kind of a stand-up hybrid martial art where we learned traditional jiu-jitsu. And so I've always liked Wristlocks. They're effective, and as I started doing jiu-jitsu, you find out that some of those things look really cool, but they don't work. And so through that experience, I've learned which ones work and which ones don't. And those are the ones that I'll share with you today. There are a couple that I do for fun, and I will call those out to you guys so you know that those are good for the gym, not necessarily the street. And we'll talk about why that is. But just to share, I'm a little bit of a nerd, so I don't know if you guys keep track of your stats when you compete. I would recommend that you do, either via notebook or whatever. It's just kind of good for learning. But I've kept track since the very beginning of my competition. I fought over 100 jiu-jitsu matches. I've won 68% of the time. That's my winning percentage, which would be awesome in baseball. It's okay in jiu-jitsu, I think. And of those wins, 66% of the time, I finish the event. So I like going for the submission. And to break that down further for you guys, 40% of the time is choke, about 25% is armbar, 15% has been a triangle, 10% is like miscellaneous, some sort of a or a foot lock or something that I got lucky with, basically. And 10% of the time, it's been a wrist lock. So in the world of Wristlocks, 10% doesn't sound like a lot, but actually, I think it's actually a pretty high percentage when you think about people that actually finish via wrist lock. So 10% of the time, what we're going to do today, it works every time. And more importantly, and what I want to talk about as we get into the techniques, is Wristlocks open up other things and they make your opponent think about other things. So one of the biggest reasons I like them is it opens up transition, it does something different, it makes someone think. So if you like, those old 80s martial arts movies, man can't see, you can't fight, man can't breathe, you can't fight, man can't stand, you can't fight. Well, if a person can't grip, they can't fight. And if I get them thinking about their grips or disrupting their grips, then I have the upper hand in the fight. And so that's what we're going to do today. We'll start with the very first wrist lock that I think everyone learns in jiu-jitsu, and then we'll progress from there. So the first one is going to be the standard self-defense wrist lock from a push. I got my handy supermodel here, James. So as always, and we're going to start with the self-defense basics, and we'll get into more jiu-jitsu specifics. But if I'm in some sort of an altercation, I want my base. And this is going to be where the guy is pushing me. So we know the scenario, the guy pushes, the first one, maybe I'm not fast enough, but I catch my base, he comes back. I'm going to trap the hand because I want him not to pull it away. So I'm just making a bend in the wrist. I bend my body forward, which is going to create a little bit more bend. I stop his elbow from backing up, and I cut my own hand. I put my head to the inside. It just makes it a little bit tighter, it's harder for him to pull away. So I go to the inside, and I pull forward on his wrist. So before we get too much further in this, what do I need to make a wrist lock happen? I need a bend in the wrist, either way, or a twist, depending on what wrist lock I'm doing. And I need a stop. It can be his elbow, it can be his shoulder, whatever. But I need to create a bend, I need to make it stop, and then I need to put pressure. So in this scenario, again, he pushes, catch the hand. So I've created the bend, I make it stop at his elbow, I reinforce, head to the inside, and then pull until I get the tap. One more time. So he pushes, catch the first one, stop the hand, create the bend, block the elbow, reinforce your hand, head to the inside. That's it. You guys got it? Alright, so I got a little tradition. Count to 3 and clap. I'll wait for everything. 1, 2, 3. Alright, a question came up, which is, which hand do I use
when the hand first hits me to trap. So I like the cross hand on this particular technique, but what I will tell you is for everything we go through today, it doesn't really matter which hand you use. I have the ones that I prefer, and there's reasons. Sometimes the transition, sometimes it's just because it's the hand I'm used to using. But all that really matters, even if I go outside, as long as I create the bend, I get the elbow to bend, the same thing's gonna work. I just prefer this one because I'm a little stronger on the grip across, and it keeps him from pulling away, which is one of the more common reactions. So the next thing I want to do, and we'll do this at the end of each technique, is I want to show what typically happens when you do this and what you can do next, because as we talked about, the best thing about Wristlocks is even if you don't get the submission, it's going to open something else up for you. So the most common reaction in this scenario, as I hit the guy, I go for the wrist lock, is the guy's going to freak out and he's going to try to bail, right? And all you guys know have a really strong wrestling base, and the guy's going to open himself up for a nice takedown. So when I go here and he bails and pulls away, this is my chance to change levels and come in for a double leg, or you can go single, whatever. That's going to be your most common scenario as you go, because the guy is not going to be thinking about his base, he's going to be thinking about his arm. We just change levels and drive in. So another thing you can drill once you feel comfortable with the wrist lock of that transition. So let's move on to the next one. It's going to be a variation of this one. And we'll have kind of the same counter at the end, and as we get more into it, we'll see other options. So this time, this is going to be more of a gi-specific technique. The guy grabs my collar. All right, so now it's going to be difficult for me to make the break in the wrist like before. In this scenario, if the guy grips too high, I'm just going to break the grip and move on. So this is when he's grabbing kind of center chest on me. So I feel like I can't get the first one, but I don't want him to get away still. So I'm going to do sort of the same thing. I'm going to grab his wrist. Or sorry, that's not his wrist, that's his elbow. It's a big wrist. So I'm going to grab his elbow, and this time I'm going to just make a fist, and I'm going to hit his wrist to create a bend outward. So I just hit the wrist, and it bends outward. Now he's got his hand stuck, and it stops kind of in the armpit area for me. And then I do the same thing. I reinforce my hands, I drive forward with my head towards the middle, and it's going to create that bend in the wrist lock. Same scenario where here he's grabbed. I know that I can't do the self-defense wrist lock, so I'm going to get a hold of his arm so he doesn't get away from me, and then I'm going to hit his hand right at the wrist. Don't make it really obvious like you're throwing a hook, right? Just a nice hit to create a bend. I reinforce, I drive my head forward and pull into the space that I've created. So one last time, as he grabs, block his elbow, hit the wrist, make sure that you stop it against your body, reinforce. I like to come into a square base if I can, and then head down in the center for the tap. 1, 2, 3. Let's show two little details here off this move. So the question comes up a lot, what's the best head position? And the natural tendency is to go to the outside, right? And the problem with this is it's really easy for James to back up or circle or take my back, and I don't have great control, and I'm not as connected to him. So the first person I saw put the head on the inside was Jacare, and I started looking at why, and you start experimenting with it. You feel that you're not connected when you're on the outside. When I'm on the inside, if he tries to pull around, I'm kind of disconnected to him. He can't really get away, and I have better leverage and better control. We talked about reactions. The most common reaction from this one is the same thing. He starts to pull away. This time he's going to straighten out, and now I'm a little further, right? So the last one, I feel like a lot of times the guy pulls out, and I have a better shot. This one, the guy tends to go the other way. So now I've got a long shot. So what I would recommend at this point is probably a low single, because he's going to be further away. So you can drop all the way down, hit the low single, and drive. Or if you want your double leg, if you're confident in the shot, you can do that as well. And one other option, because the guy's backing away a little bit, just to transition onto a single leg. I like to swing to the outside, one, because I'm not a very good wrestler. And so if the guy starts to defend or bail, I'm in a safe position. So let's do the last scenario from a gi grip. And I'll show you how it works with no gi. But this is a more traditional jiu-jitsu wrist lock where we twist. So before I get into that, I want to show just a grip because this is important. So we talked about bending down. We've done one where we bent back with the body, and we'll do one where we start doing that with our hands in a minute. If you are having trouble with a guy getting into tap because he's flexible straight back or back, then add a little bit of a twist, all right? And the two that we're gonna do today, most people, if they're flexible front and back, they can't withstand the twist. If they can, they've got double jointed, then you may just need to move on to some under submission, but those are really, really rare. So what we're gonna do on this particular one, the ideal grip, I'm gonna have you swing that one. The ideal grip that I'm looking for is my two thumbs aligned with his middle finger, and my fingers are planted into the meaty part of his hand in this palm. This is the ideal grip. I may have to adjust or whatever, but the most important part of this is that I'm squeezing his hand flat and gaining control of his wrist. Two hands always better than one hand, right? So in this particular scenario, one other thing I'll show before I do the actual wrist lock is the footwork. So this is going to be off of a grip. I'm going to set it up by getting that grip. So usually I take a step back to draw him in. Most people like that. I'm going to grab the palm of his hand. And now I do what would be a very typical self-defense step. So I'm staying in base, and I'm just going to swing back and then bend forward. So you guys can see here, when he grabs, this is a common scenario off the stand-up. If I try to get the grip here, I'm in an awkward position. My arms are in the way. So I actually take a step back to draw him in. Most times he's going to take a step. As he's stepping, that's when I take advantage to get my grip. Now I'm in good base. I have great control of his hand. I'm going to swing back, and then I'm going to lean forward to take him down. All right? On this side. So he grips. I'm going to draw him in a little bit as I grab, swing, lean forward. Notice that even though I'm bending forward, I'm also bending my knees, so I'm not just out of balance here. That gives me time that when he's rolling through something, I can catch up to him. Let me show one other variation if you're a no-gi guy and you like the Russian tie. So a lot of guys will grab the back of your neck. Oh, right? You think, well, how can I get a wrist lock in here? And I actually did this at Vibe Grappling and set up a takedown and made the guy worry about his grips. So I'm going to do the same thing I normally would do with the Russian tie. I'm going to hit forward and I'm just going to grab the hand. So the guy's worried about me doing normal Russian tie type activity, right? So when I move and I go to his wrist, he doesn't think anything of it, which is perfect for me to transition and do the same thing. So it's a good option, even if you miss, to get the guy worried about his gripping. And now I'm in a position, again, to finish with the wrist lock. So let's give it a try. 1, 2, 3. He's giving me this grip. So I'm not going to let him have it back. So I'm just going to keep him tied to my chest. Right, so now he's mine. His hand's close to me, my elbows are closed, all the principles of leverage apply where I'm going to be way stronger than his hand. So I'm just going to use my body to do the twist, right, instead of my arms. And it's going to be so hard, unless I slip my grip out, which is not getting that hard. A couple common reactions in that scenario and what you can do with that. So whether it's no gi or not, as I set this up, I'm going to run into two situations. As I start to pull, the guy can start to worry, and so maybe I get into this arm battle because I didn't keep his wrist close to me. So now I'm going to have a couple different options. So what I like to do, if I have the arm, but it's a little farther away from me, is I'm going to add almost like an uchimata. So I'm just going to keep this grip. I'm going to come inside. I'm going to keep kicking while I do the twist. And it's not a traditional uchimata where I have his waist and I'm throwing him. It's just to put extra torque on the wrist. I'm being kind of nice because James is my friend. But when you do this in a tournament, you just boom, kick, and it's going to put that torque on the wrist, and the guy's going to want to go. So one more time, that option here, I come out, it starts to pull away. I'm starting to lose, so instead of trying to fight this battle, I'm just going to come in and hang on to the wrist. The next thing that can happen is, especially scrambly guys, they're gonna roll when they feel it. So I got good control. I start to go, he wants to roll out, so I need to follow him. And I can either take the arm bar, or if he goes all the way over, I'm just gonna switch and come onto his back. So as long as you anticipate that reaction, you're gonna be ahead of the game. If you have really good wrist control, you'll be able to stop him from rolling and go arm bar. You're in the street, don't fall back on an arm bar, stay on top, go punches. If he rolls all the way around, swing around his back. He grabs, I get my grip. As I start to go, if he starts to roll, first I'm gonna stop. So I control the wrist just like an arm bar, thumb straight up, and I reach for the arm. Again, if I'm on the street, I'm not gonna drop back for an arm bar. I'll just stay here, drop my knee on his head, punch to the face. If I'm in a tournament, I can go arm bar. Or if he ends up rolling all the way, I just still control the arm, but I'm gonna give up on the wrist lock. I don't have great positioning here. Just pin his arm to the mat, transition. Give you your seatbelt, stand the hips well. All right, let's move on to where I think the wrist locks are probably even more underutilized than anywhere else, and that's the guard. So I'm a closed guard player. I think closed guard is the safest guard. It's probably one of the few guards where you can kind of rest. The other ones you need to be really active. So we'll work through some common scenarios here in the closed guard. And these are going to look somewhat similar if you remember the principles from being on our feet. So most common thing someone does in our closed guard is they're going to get a grip, one grip, and they're going to start working one on my pants. Either to stand up or to put a knee in the center and start to drive. So what I'm going to do here, and for this particular one, I prefer the cross grip like we did before. He's giving this to me. He's thinking about standing. As he starts to adjust his weight, I'm going to hit the hand to make the bend. I'm going to grab the outside of his elbow, and I'm going to pull with my legs to create that bend. Now this is the hard part for some people. I just take my hand that was making the bend, and I sneak it through this little hole, and I reinforce, and now I crunch. And that creates the wrist lock. Some people like, on this one, to go outside. I find it hard if the guy's strong to make the bend here. So I can still do it, it's good. The nice thing is, if I get to here, the second hand's easy to get, but I find it hard to make the bend. So for me personally, I like the cross grip. I make a little bend in his arm. He's usually not threatened at this point because he thinks that's the grip that I want to stand up. So as he starts to stand, I hold his elbow, I pull my knees in and I flare his elbow out. Keep everything tight, transition this hand inside, reinforce your own hand, crunch forward for the tap. All right, so last time, as I'm here, some of this is timing. You can force this move, but it's even better when the guy starts to stand. So you set it up, make your bend, plant him in. He's standing, I pull him down. He thinks, oh, I need to adjust my base. And I think, oh, you're gonna tap him. All right?
It's worse because you're laying on your own arm.
All right, guys, let's give it a try. 1, 2, 3. So we'll talk about common reactions off of this one. As I was saying earlier, one of the things that I really like about this particular thing, and wrist locks in general, you guys are all picking this up really fast, right? Because the principles are all the same. The hands start to feel similar, and you start to see it in more and more places. So they're pretty easy to execute. What's nice about this is, in theory, I'm in a defensive position at this point. I don't really have great grips from the closed guard, and he's starting to attack me and open up. But in my defense, I can still be offensive. So I can make him think as he's trying to open me up, maybe I shouldn't open up his guard because it's kind of scary. He's got wrist locks as he's breaking my posture and all kinds of things. So what typically happens here is the guy feels me pulling him forward and he shoots his hand up forward. Boom. Because he doesn't want that wrist lock. So from here, I'm going to have two options. The first one is I'm just going to keep him coming, and I'm going to adjust to a head and arm. Okay? You can do the talk on the telephone, however you prefer. If you're really quick, you can try to work to the back from there. There's a lot of options. The second thing that happens a lot for me is as I come here and he shoots his hand through, he thinks, oh, I don't want him coming to my
all the way. So he just starts to sit back a little bit, which is going to give me the angle for an arm. So two very common situations off of that attack. Worst case, if I miss both of those, I'm still very safe. I'm in close guard. Let's talk about the next situation. So a lot of guys like to do both hands on the hips, and then they'll be jerks and dig their elbows in. Oh, this can be annoying, right? They start to pull back and they open up your guard. So, come back to the beginning. So before he gets his knee in the center, as soon as the guy puts his hands on my hips, I know he's going to try to open my guard, either by driving his elbows down, which is just the mean way, it's not really technique. He's going to try to pick a side and put a knee in. So this time I'm going to block with the outside hand. And the reason for that is he's this far back, it's harder for me to get to his elbows. So when I go this way, I don't feel like I have the leverage that I need. So I block with the outside hand, and I'm going to make like a side crunch. So I side crunch, and then I grab his elbow here. Now, when I pull, it flares out, and I get better leverage to make that bend, stop his elbow. This hand transitions from the hand just to his elbow, doesn't matter how you grip, and I just crunch forward. He's already tapping. You guys can't see that. So, this is a really strong wrist lock, and it's going to come on fast when you do it to the guy. So, block from the outside, side crunch, grab the back of his elbow. Pull with your legs again and flare out. If he hasn't tapped yet, like James did, just reinforce, and then I crunch and I pull. All right. I think they want to see that again, James.
Yeah, probably so.
They totally want to see that again. You guys want to see that again? I want to see that again. I mean, I don't know if I got a good angle to
What
see.
if I put my elbow?
That's perfect. Yeah. Well, so the guy's putting his. That's good. So yeah. See, now he's all concentrating on driving my elbow. He thinks he's strong, and I'm like, that's great. Come here. Oh, and he gets wrist locked. So works the same. Everybody got it? All right, guys. 1, 2, 3.
So I mentioned it before, and I'll say it for the group. This is a philosophy that I use for all of my grip fighting and jiu-jitsu, but it's the same thing for any submission, especially for wrist locks. I always think about having 3 points of contact, like I'm rock climbing. So I never want to bail on 2 hands and just trust that my feet are going to propel me up the mountain because I'll fall off and die. That's my mentality as I'm fighting. So no matter what we're doing, if I'm wrist locking and we've got this here, I don't want to transition and yeah, I just lost everything, right? So I always try to do the most efficient movement possible, no matter what the wrist lock is, where as I'm transitioning, I grip and I take the shortest route to do my next grip, no matter what those things are. So as you're going through your movements, whether it's your grip fighting, right? You break a grip, you keep a grip, right? And then you adjust to the next grip that you want. No matter what you're doing in jiu-jitsu, if you can think about shortest route possible, most efficient gripping, and if you find yourself bailing completely or having to move or do big body adjustments, that's the time to stop and say, what did I do there? And is there a more efficient way to do it? So let's move on to the reactions
In this scenario. So his hands are on my hips. Most common reaction here is the guy is going to punch his arm through, which is going to make for a really nice omoplata. So I just brace here. If you're like super flexible, you can just throw your leg over, but sometimes I need a little space to hip out, pop over. You can adjust and finish your omoplata however you prefer. But that's going to be the most common scenario, just to help this guy out. I'll go to the other arm so you can see. When I come here, is the guy's going to say, ah, and he bails on the arm. The other thing I can do here is a kimura, but if you feel really strong, you got the guy trapped, right? Just push him away, make some space in front of the face, come through here. I like to grab right away, and I like kind of like the Andre Galvao method for omoplata, which is that I straighten my legs. Straighten my legs as I sit up because it puts a lot more pressure on the shoulder, and then you can make your adjustment. To finish, if I'm worried, you can always grab either the belt or the lag and ugly, and your climb out. And I'll show, since we're here, a little bonus move for the day. Everyone knows lots of grips here, right? One of the really cool ones,
with the gi is just to grab the guy's collar, like right at the scruff of the neck, and put my elbow in line with the spine. I'm not doing this just because I want to make James' life miserable. It's a nice little adjustment on the back. I adjust so my knees on top of his shoulder, and then my trick as I tuck back is I do like a 45 crunch here. Until he taps. But this is a really good control. Puts a lot of weight on him, and it's just something different you can do that most guys don't do with the gi. So let me show the one other reaction. It's not a normal quad. I'll go back to the other side so you can see. Which is if the guy punches his arm to the ground, boom, and maybe you feel like he's too high for an omoplata, you just switch. Do a few more. And you can finish from here. So those are going to be very common reactions in that situation. So let's move on. Another common situation when the guy's in my closed guard is he puts the hands in my armpits. Now I'm going to warn you, when you do this wrist lock, be careful because it comes on fast. And what you're going to find is that the guy's probably going to react by pulling away, so you're going to feel like you can't get the wrist lock because the guy knows what you're doing. But in competition, this works very well. And again, worst case, it just makes the guy not want to grip. So it doesn't matter if he's got grips in my armpits or he's doing what he's doing here, which both are very common. So all I'm going to do is I start to make the guy extend his arms a little bit, thinking that he's kind of in control. Then I'm going to swing my arm over to make sure that I get his hand trapped nice into my armpit. And then I do another side crunch here. In this case, if he keeps his arm straight, like he does, we go back into our scenarios of omoplata. But what's going to happen most times is the guys are all hunkered down here, right? The elbows are bent already. So as I make my adjustment and I bend here, his wrist is bent. To finish, I like to come underneath my own leg and I do my crunch. Okay? So, again, this is going to be, in this scenario here, if I need the guy to bend, that's part of the reason why I start to swing my arms a little bit, because it creates a little bit of a bend in his elbow. I swing to the side, I lift my knee up. That's going to trap his elbow against my thigh. There's already bend in the wrist. You can see that. So I just cut my own leg, cut my own leg. Sometimes you don't even have to cut, you can just grab, and I do a crunch. This is one that you are not going to do slowly. You can do it slowly here. But again, when you do this, sorry, James. So when I do this in a competition, I want to get that little bit of bend, and I just go, right? And the guy's probably going to yell, which is going to be my submission victory. So this one's going to be a little bit weird. So go slow and try to find the bend in the arm, and I'll help you guys with it because it's kind of a feeling wrist lock. 1, 2, 3. Usually not going to flare his elbow out. But because he's stalling, he's all locked down, he doesn't want to go anywhere. This is your chance to make a big one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but make your side bend first. Yeah, get a little bend. I like to reach under. Yeah, now pull like this all the way as you do more of a side crunch. Yeah, there you go. If you want to see this technique in practice, Claudio Calasanz does this a ton. So very effective at the highest levels of jiu-jitsu. But there's another common scenario in the guard where the guy will grab my sleeve with the same side arm, and usually what he wants to do is stuff it down so that he can stand up on that side and I can't underhook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of bait him a little bit with this, and I'm going to get into a wrist lock again. So he's got same side grips. I'm not going to grip him back in this scenario. I'm going to start to sneak my hand up, right? And he's going to be pulling against me, so he's going to feel like, yeah, I need to control this arm, and like we're going to fight here, but I don't really want this fight. What I want is the wrist. So now, once I get his arm a little bit exposed, I'm going to use my legs to pull him forward. Right? So as I pull him with my legs, I continue to move my hand up, and I switch my palm over, and I just grab his hand.
This hand reaches over the top, and I swing around, creating a bend backwards. Now, before he can pull his elbow out, I need to adjust up. So if I can go in one step and get to high guard, that's better. If I can't and I need to adjust just to keep everything tight here, I will. But this is ultimately where I want to be. And now I finish the same as before, which I've got the bend, it's stopped against my abdomen, I've got my grips, doesn't matter if you have bicep or forearm, and then you just crunch forward. And I'm pushing down on his hand. Again, he's kind of tied up in my own gi, so it's going to be hard for him to get away. So he grabs again. Oh, he punches me. I start to pull a little bit here, fighting with the arms. And once I get to about my chest height, this is where I know I'm in a good position. So down here, if I pull, it's going to be a lot of fighting. If I can get his hand to about my chest, now when I pull him forward, I'm going to have good leverage to get my arms over. So once I'm here, even if I have to wait a little bit till he starts to adjust his base, that's going to be my time to pull. I switch my hand over and grab. Kind of at the same time, I'm going to reach over the top and snake underneath. Now I need to control that elbow before he pulls it back. So whether you have to make a step, like an armbar with the arm really tight, and adjust up, or whether you're able just to jump up, that's fine. And from here, bend forward for the tap. Now in full speed. So kind of the scenario, right? We're wrestling, and I'll even move it around a little bit to make him think that I really want this arm back. And then when I'm ready, pull and jump up. Underneath it. Everybody got it? 1, 2, 3. Just start to pull him up to your chest. Pull, pull, pull. Yeah, there. That's fine. You don't want to be too obvious. You just want to make it a little bit where he's pulling. You're usually going to have a little bit of posture. Yeah, there you go. Now pulling forward with your legs. Yeah. Cut with the hand. Cut. Yeah. Control. Good. Now if you can, find, like even if you have to make a little here. Put that a little bit. Lock it up. Like lock the close guard up over your shoulder. Lock. Yeah. Now his wrist is yours. You'll know that your wrist lock worked is when the guy does this after. That's the, everyone's in. Then you know you had a good wrist lock. All right, so let's talk about common reactions off this one. So a lot of times what's going to happen here is one of a couple things. So as I get him here and I start to go, he's going to try to fight out with the elbow. Yeah, and I'm going to be in trouble, right? I'm going to lose the wrist lock. So worst case, I'm still in guard. It's just no big deal. But one of the other options that's going to happen, if I do a good job of breaking his posture here, as he tries to pull out, I'm going to jump up to a triangle. All right? So you can see that coming. He had no idea. So if I don't break his posture down, though, on this move, it's going to be really hard to get the triangle. So just be aware that like I really need to pull the guy, and then if he starts to fight his way out with the elbow, this hand's just going to give as I release my guard, and I'm going to jump up. You can grab your own shin, adjust the position, come off the triangle. So that's probably the most common situation that's going to happen. It's going to be your easiest attack. So let's talk about another scenario that happens a lot when guys are trying to open the guard up, which is the cross sleeve grip. So a lot of guys like this too. This used to frustrate me a lot because it's better leverage for him on top, and now it's harder for me to pull the sleeve. So in this case, I am actually going to grab back. So I'm going to grab the sleeve back because I feel like it gives me a little better leverage to start pulling. And we're going to do almost the exact same thing. So from here, I'm going to start to pull a little bit just to get a little bit of opening. So yeah, arm wrestling, I'm going to win. Anyways, so we're going to pull with the legs again. And I'm gonna do the same thing where I go over the top of his wrist here, and I'm gonna go to the other side and lock over shoulder. It's always better if I can get over the shoulder, not just because if the guy has really flexible wrists, I can transition to arm bars, but this makes it really hard for him to escape. So I can still finish this from here, but I might have to crunch more or use more arm strength. When I'm here, it's an inch, but it makes a big difference. So again, this one should feel really comfortable, you guys, because we just did something really similar. And I want you to see that no matter how the guy's gripping you, you have an option. So like I said, I just like to grip back, and I start to pull a little bit. And once I have just a little bit of space where he's not locked down, which makes it hard for me to go, I can make a little space here. Now I'm going to be able to pull him in with my legs. Same situation again. At this point, I don't have the grip because he's got such a tight grip on me. It's fine. I just create the bend and I hide my hand because it'll be there later. This one I'm going to adjust and lock. Same thing. And then go for the wrist lock. Once more again. So he pulls, grip back, and the important detail here is just pull enough. You can even go with two hands if you need to get that little bit of space for your leg. Now I'm going to pull him with my legs, make my wrap, make the bend in the wrist, get my grips, adjust to high guard if I can, finish with my wrist lock. I just feel like I need the face class. 1, 2, 3. Feels better when you.
So a couple common reactions for this scenario, and
A couple of you guys saw it already. So if the guy grabs here, I can do my normal move, right, where I get back, I pull. And the most common scenario here is the guy trying to pull away, but if I get this far in as he tries to pull back, I can just switch to an arm bar. So that's the most common scenario. You guys were seeing too when the guy does a pistol grip. So what ends up happening here is his wrist is turned up. So it's going to be harder for me to make it bend the way we were bending it. No problem. I just change my angle like we did before, and then we grip over the top. And I'm going to come back this way and make the wrist bend down. And you can reinforce if you want, or you can stay here and finish. So that's another common reaction. So if you feel the guy has a grip that's preventing you from going backwards, like we were doing, no problem. We're going to make the same adjustment. I pull with my legs, I grip over the top this way, and I create the bend by pressing down. Right? Everything else is the same. And now, especially for people with flexible wrists, I can twist to the outside as I do the wrist lock. All right?
Yeah, that sucks.
You are welcome. All right, I think that is it for wrist locks in the guard. Let's talk about a place that people don't think about wrist locks very much, which is passing. So the first two I'm going to show you, I'll be 100% honest. I've seen some people try this in tournaments. I don't recommend it. These are kind of like, I'm in class, I want to open up the game, I want to have some fun, I want to see how people react and work on my timing. These are two good wrist locks for that. I will say, if in the right hands, these work well. So where I learned this first one is a guy named Leon. He was a purple belt. He was like 60 or 70. He was a red sash in Kung Fu. And so he'd come into the gym and he'd look all, like he couldn't do anything to anyone. And people would be all unsuspecting. And he'd grab a wrist and he would dive roll. And I can't tell you how many people I saw tap out from this little old man that looked like a ninja. So we're gonna work that scenario today. It can be from the person on their knees or sitting on their butt, but we'll do it on their knees so that James has a chance to react. So what I'm going to do here is, that's fine, I'm going to be on my knees, James is on his knees, and all I'm looking for is that grip that we had before.
So I can just grab, this works gi or no gi, I can grab his hand, right? And if I see that he's not fighting hard for this hand, that's when I'm gonna go. So I'm gonna get the grip that we did at the beginning, which is the thumbs on the knuckles and the meat in the palm of the hand. All right, so as we're here, I'm hand fighting, I get a little bit of a grip. As soon as I feel like I can go, I'm gonna make this grip. For the sake of us as we roll, and I'm gonna come towards you there, I'm just gonna post one leg up, and I'm gonna roll to my side. If you do this and you actually want it to be somewhat effective, you just die. So, but I just put one leg up, and I'm gonna roll to my side. Here. Right, now he rolled with me, which is no problem, so I'm gonna go straight into the transition today, which is that I'm just gonna plant his hand on the mat, and adjust to the back. So we'll kind of skip ahead on this one because it's good as a flow move. Back. So we're here, we're hand fighting, I start to get some control, I adjust to both grips, post my foot, and I roll. My partner is nice, he rolled with me, I can still finish him here if I wanted to, but instead I just keep a grip with one hand, plant it on the mat, swing to the back. Alright, so one more time. You can see where if you know the move's coming, you can roll with it. But if you don't know this move is coming, because you're a 70-year-old man and you just dive, your wrist is going to go before you have time to even think about attack. So one last time, we're here. Make sure you get the over grip. So I like to reach for the thumb. And once I have this, now I know I'm going to be able to do something, especially if he doesn't pull away. So I kind of twist up, get my control. Foot comes up, and I roll. Because he adjusted, stuff the hand to the mat, swing around, and secure the back. Everybody got it? 1, 2, 3. So we'll talk common reactions from that situation. So we were talking about, could I just drag and go straight to the back? Yes. But right now he's thinking about not letting me get to the back, so the roll helps me set other stuff up. So I know this is coming before he does, right? So as I roll, I can stay aggressive here and stay on it and try to keep the tap. Or you can go to the back, or if you want to be just like a superstar. Oh, I'm gonna do a flying triangle. So again, this is a fun move, right? So this is gonna be the second move that we do that I consider kind of a fun move. So I like doing this in no-gi just to open things up and you expose yourself a little bit, but it induces a scramble and makes things happen. So kind of like I said before, this is not like, don't do this move on unsuspecting people because you have to go fast to do it. So this is like a tournament move. I probably wouldn't do this on the street because I'm not gonna roll around and get stomped on by some other person's buddy. But it's a great tournament move if you're up like 50 points and there's 10 seconds left and you have nothing to lose and you feel like doing something crazy. Or if you're down by 50 points and there's 10 seconds left and you feel like doing something crazy, but this might be your crazy move that gets a submission. We're going to do a similar roll. We're going to roll the opposite direction, and it's going to be an over-the-top grip. So, just like rock. So in this case, I'm hand fighting, and the last one we gripped here. This one I just grip over the top, and I do almost the exact same things with my hands. I'm lining up on his middle finger with both thumbs, and my fingers are in the meaty part. But this time it's just the palms down. All right. So same situation. I get a grip, and I grip here. This time I'm going to roll inside on James. I'm going to do the exact same thing. So I start to roll here. This one's painful as well, and the exact same thing is going to happen where I just plant the hand on the ground in transition. You guys will feel this. It's actually, I think this one's worse than the other one because your hand actually naturally bends this way a little bit, doesn't bend this way as much. So this one comes on fast. So through here, I get my over grip, I grab 2 hands, and same thing, I just dive underneath, and I roll. In this scenario again, post your hand, swing through, and then back. As you see it again, you feel good? It's close to the last one. Okay. 1, 2, 3. So from this one, the last one we rolled outside, this one we rolled inside. Why did I roll inside on this grip? Somebody discovered it. Yeah. So when I roll outside with this grip, I don't have enough leverage
yet to stop James from following me and coming on top. Oh, now I'm gonna get armbarred or kimura or something bad, right?
So that's why for this particular grip, when I'm over on top of the hand, I like to roll this way. It's going to be really hard, like close the distance, close the distance, close the distance, close the distance. It's hard for him to close the distance. It actually makes my wrist lock better. So just something to think about. If you find guys are jumping on you when you're doing the move, you probably rolled to the wrong direction. So let's move on to another place where we're still talking about guard passes here, but where I don't see a lot of wrist locks today, but I think they're really effective. And this next one is going to be from like a knee slide position. So I've set up, I started passing, and I've gotten to this situation here. And sometimes now what happens is guys start to reach up for the collar, they want to push the chest away or something like that. So I'm going to show you the actual wrist lock. But what I want to work today more than the wrist lock, because wrist locks open up other things, is the reaction that the guy typically has and how we can use that to pass. So if he plants his hand here, I can just commit to a wrist lock. Same thing that we've done before. I'm going to trap the hand, I'm going to dive forward, I'm going to trap his arm on the ground, and I reach forward and I can submit. So you guys can see the angle here. So I can do the same thing when a guy is pushing on me. I just trap the hand, I jump forward, trapping his arm, then I come here. I don't really care if he keeps my hand or not, or my foot. I mean, then half guard doesn't matter, because I'm just going to finish with the wrist lock. So if a guy knows that I like wrist locks, and he feels that threat, most times when I'm here, and I start to trap, he starts to pull the hand back, right? And this is what I want. This little chicken wing position here. And I'm going to shoot my arm underneath, and I'm going to trap James's arm in like a chicken wing. So as I'm here passing, I start to go, he starts to pull his hand back. I'm going to shoot here. Right, the important part of this move is that I want to trap his wrist with my shoulder against his shoulder. Right, so just underhook here and I come here. Now, this is a really uncomfortable position for James. I'm going to continue with pressure with my head on the other side here. I drop my weight onto his shoulder and pull up on the arm. I'm already out, but I just like putting pressure on James now. And I finish with a normal pass. It's a side. So it's a really, really strong pass, and it's nice. So as I set up here, coming in, the guy pushes, I start to attack, he starts to pull his arm in, I slide up and follow. What's important about this is if I keep my head on this side, even though this is really good pressure on the arm, it doesn't make the pass miserable for him. He might be able to fish an underhook, or I'm off balance, so he might be able to take me to the side. So if I get to here, I want to make sure my head's on the other side. And you can pull up on the elbow, or if you're on this side, pull up on the elbow, drop your hips low. If you need to kick, you kick. To finish. One more. So, inside situation, I'm pulling in, I come here, oh, I hit a roadblock, right? So I start to attack the wrist, and I climb up and trap the arm. And go ahead and trap my arm. So, what's nice about this is as the guy pulls here, this pressure is really heavy. So if you're stuck here, no problem. My back leg kicks the top. And the bottom, in this case. and we come to side control. Pretty good? All right, 1, 2, 3. All right, so I just want to show one detail in that position, actually 2 details. So one is that for this to work, if his shin is in the way, I need to address this first. I can't effectively wrist lock him because I need to be able to create the bend, make the stop, but I can't get there because his leg's in my way, right? So if I'm doing this, my first priority is to get past, and that's why I like this hand on the hip, is because when he tries to get that leg in, my elbow just kind of blocks, right? So I have to clear the leg first. Now I'm in a position where I can go. The next most important thing is what actually makes this pass work is the pain in the shoulder and the elbow when I miss the wrist lock. So as he's pulling back, when I come in here, I'm actually crunching my shoulder on his wrist into his shoulder like a little sandwich. And that pressure alone can be enough sometimes to make a guy tap. And that's what's going to give me a pass. So the common scenario that happens here is as I'm coming in, the guy freaks out and he pulls his arm so far that I don't get that crunch, but I still have a really solid underhook, and I can still do the exact same pass the same way. It's just, I might have to wait a little bit longer as I'm kicking and working my leg because I don't have that pain to get the guy to let go of the guard. Let's look at one more. This is like the ultimate where the guy just feels super embarrassed that this happened to him, but it works. You can do this from close guard too. But same scenario, I'm passing, I'm trying to do knee slide. And what happens a lot of times, you get a guy with a really good half guard and he'll lock and you're sitting here and then you're just kind of stuck, right? He's not really doing anything. And all of us get into this position where we start getting lazy with our hands, right? And so you get this guy that's just kind of sitting here and his hands just kind of floating around, right? So he's thinking, oh, he's going to pass, oh, he's going to whatever, and I'm going to wrist lock him from here. And all I'm going to do is go to his hand, grab, so just thumb on thumb, wrap around his hand. The important part about this grip is I want to squeeze his knuckles together. It's like that handshake that you're not prepared for and the guy squishes your hand. That's kind of what I'm doing, but I'm just going over the top. So I go here. So I've created my bend. There's a stop at the elbow on the mat, and now I'm just going to push. And I get a wrist lock. It's like the silliest thing. I know you guys are looking at me like, for real? Like this actually happens? This happens. Like it really does. And you'll notice it when you're rolling, these guys get kind of limp wrist, where they're just sitting there and they don't think about their hand, but it's on the mat, so it's just kind of hanging out. And this is my chance to just grab and go here. Now sometimes he starts to scoot his elbow up, so I just follow, and you get the tap. So I know it looks silly, but you guys are gonna feel this, and it's a legit wrist lock. I'm in my pass, I start working my knee slide, he locks it all up, and we get in this kind of stalemate, and so I start to look disinterested, he starts to get lazy with his hands, he's just kind of hanging out, maybe he forgets, oh, I have an option here. I grab, squeeze the hand together, drive it down into the mat, and if he starts to track, you just follow, and you get the wrist lock. This is one, when we're doing it with our partners, go slow, but when you do this in a tournament, you're gonna just hit the hand. In fact, I think this just happened at Abu Dhabi from a different position where a guy just hit the wrist, and the guy yelled and he got the submission, right? So this is a surprise kind of attack where, you know, he doesn't really know what's going on. Just boom, I hit, and I'm gonna get the wrist lock. All right, let's give it a try. 1, 2, 3. He's probably gonna have some deep half guard options and some other things. So if I'm up here, before, yeah, now the wrist is gone and now I'm in trouble here. So I always want to be here. Go ahead, knock it up. So here, I like to sit on the guy's leg. So make some pressure here, my leg is out, and then this arm always is back, because until I have an underhook, my back is in danger in this position. So I'm always here, you can even have the knee, that's fine, right? But I want something to keep him from coming to my back. So this is going to be a really solid, you can feel, right? There's a lot of pressure. Yeah. And now, just look at his wrist. It's just, he's resting, it's naturally there, and boom, it goes. So when you go though, like make sure, don't put your knee on the mat, because that's going to keep your ankle locked. Sit on him, put a little pressure in, protect your back, leg out. Let's move on.
That's why I keep standing back.
You won't let me move on until I don't want to settle. I get it, that's smart. The action there is almost the exact same as what happens with the other pass where you can get the underhook, but a concept, this is a good concept maybe, where even from close guard, the same scenario can happen. Or if I feel like, man, I can't get the guy going, but he starts getting lazy with his hands, I'm gonna do the same thing. And I'll just hit this, and sometimes he'll freak out, or it just is enough to open, and then I'm passing again, right? So just an idea to keep in mind with that particular move. So I want to move on to what, outside of the guard, what are my highest percentage wrist locks. This next one I think is the ultimate wrist lock. You're in a safe position. It happens all the time, and I've gotten this in competition. I think I hit this at Masters Worlds a couple years back. It's really good wrist lock. So side control. James is here. We've all been in this scenario. We know when I'm in side control, I want to block the hip with my leg. I like to get the crossface here. I'm bigger, so I tend to have both of my knees up. If you're smaller, you know, you may want to be back a little bit more, have both hands here while you're waiting. But I find because of my size, I can usually sit with both knees up, and it gives me a little more mobility. So what I want to do is get to this situation here. And a lot of times, the guy starts to push on our neck, right? Yeah, so this can be kind of irritating for us. It can be frustrating, and we're going to make him pay for that, actually. So as he's pushing on my neck here, right? So, nice. I'm going to create the bend like we talked about. This time I'm going to do it with my chin. So my chin goes, and I create a bend in his wrist by just putting my chin right on the wrist joint. So I go here. Now, the part about this move that I think makes it really strong for me, some people just jump right over it. I like to take this bottom hand, and I wrap it all the way under his elbow, and I grab his shoulder. So this really locks his arm in place, as opposed to just going from here, where he still has some elbow mobility, right? When I come underneath here, now I take away a lot of space. So I pinch down, and I've got his wrist trapped now. Now my outside arm comes over, and this is going to add the final kind of trap and pressure on the wrist. You can see the bend. And I just grab either his elbow or my own, depending on the size of my opponent, and I'm going to be here. Now, the big mistake people make is they start to drive forward. Not only does it take pressure off the wrist, but this gives him space to either topple me over or get out. So when I'm here, and I come here, same thing we've been doing. I just squeeze my shoulder to his elbow. And I can even use like gravity and sorry, he was tapping, I enjoyed that. So we'll do that again. So I'm here, inside control, and he's pushing up on my neck. So I'm gonna come underneath and I'm gonna trap his shoulder. Still pushing, I create the bend in the wrist. I come over to the final bend and either grab his elbow or my own. I like his elbow because it takes away all the mobility. And now I go a little bit forward, shoulder in, and I finish off. One more time. Side control. Oh. Once the guy starts to settle a little bit, you can even start to set it up here. It doesn't even matter if the guy's pushing that much. I can kind of force the action here by just trapping his wrist with my chin. So trap. Come over. Finish the bend. Grip here. And boom. And when I'm doing this in a tournament, I go pretty quick. So like, if we're fighting here, the guy's pushing, boom. I'm going to just jump on the wrist, right? So again, most wrist locks, if you go faster, it's going to catch the guy by surprise. So let's give it a try. 1, 2, 3. His hand is not bent, so straighten your hand up. Yeah, so here I can still make the bend. Retreat your hand a little bit, or make a fist. If there's a fist, and I feel like I lose it, like I'm going to know, right? But the beautiful thing is, no matter how hard I go, even if I don't have it, I'm still in such a safe position that that's fine. Just readjust again. Maybe I make the guy think about something else. Oh, that's my chance to go, right? So if you don't get it the first time, or you're going and you're just like, oh, why isn't he tapping? That's okay. Move on, make him think about something different. And then if he goes again, then go a little bit faster that time and make sure you get that last adjustment. And this is one of those things where you just keep attacking it because you're in a dominant position, you're safe, you're active. You have like nothing to lose, right? And the guy is freaking out because he's on bottom and he can't touch you anymore. So, so don't freak out. If you don't get it the first time, it's fine. Keep working, and then we transition later. There's so many transitions that come off these, and we're not even doing the really simple, straightforward, like, oh, you're in a normal plot and there's a wrist lock there, and oh, you're in an arm bar and there's a wrist lock there. Like, these are just kind of the lesser known wrist lock variations. So, yeah, the idea being hopefully this, if you see him in all these positions, you're going to see him in the obvious positions. You're going to be able to use him from everywhere, and you start threatening him, and other things will happen. So. So let's move on to the next scenario here, and sometimes it happens off of this wrist lock. I'm trying to work stuff here. He starts to freak out, and I just adjust, and I get into my mount. So from mount, there's two wrist locks that I really like. The first one's going to be off an Americana. So I'm going to show kind of an old school way to hit the Americana, and then where we go with the wrist lock after. So a lot of guys are looking for the Americana here, and it's really obvious, and he knows what's coming. So this is great for volley tudo. It's great in a gi too. It's okay. You can actually do this, and it's not because I'm not punching the guy. But if I'm on the street, I can actually hit him, right? And he starts to worry about that, and I act like I'm going to hit, and I just hit his wrist to the mat. So if I'm not on the street or I'm not in a fight, I'm going to do the same kind of thing without throwing the early punches, so I don't get DQ'd, right? So I'm just going to be here, and maybe he thinks I'm looking for a choke, and then when I'm ready, boom, I hit the hand and I plant it on the mat, right? So from here, he thinks, oh, he's looking for the Americana, right? And maybe most guys start to like adjust their hand up, right? And then most people will come all the way over and do an armbar. But I don't want to have to adjust my position all over the place. I'm already here, there's a submission right in front of me. So before I go to the armbar and before I start to move my base, I'm going to take advantage of this position. So we went from Americana, he starts to adjust, he goes here and he's thinking, okay, he's going to go for the armbar, and that's when I'm going to put him in half guard or whatever. And instead of all that happening, I just slide my hand down, I grab his wrist, I make a little bend, shoulder pressure here, and I drive forward into the mat. If that's not enough, I adjust here, and I pull up. All right, so this is like the submission before the next submission. So again, we're here, and practice is Americana. It's a nice Americana. So just boom, I hit the guy. I start to adjust. He starts to climb up and retreat. So I'm going to clear his head, and I make a bend here. And I'll just use the mat as a stopper too. I don't even need to grab sometimes. I can just push forward. If I need the extra support, I grab. I use my shoulder to make the bend. And if I have to with two hands, I'll break it again for the third time, right? So I'll do the other side. So you can see, so mount, nothing's working for me. Boom, aggressive, hit it. Look here, he starts to come up, follow up, and here's where I stop. Grab the hand, make a little bend, drive with my shoulder. If that's not enough, I can adjust. I drive here, and then we can always transition if we keep going. The armbar and all the other stuff later. All right. 1, 2, 3. So the other thing that happens here when I'm mounted is the guy will start to grab my belt. Okay? And this is going to be similar to the one that we did when we were in the guard, except this is going to be even easier to finish because I've got gravity helping me out now. So because of the way he's grabbed, he's created a bend already. So for me, my job's going to be pretty easy here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the wrist, but if I just go for the wrist lock, I'm going to be off balance here, and this is going to be his chance to push me and maybe get his guard back. So what I want to do first is I want to address my base. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down a little bit, and I'm going to take whichever side that I'm attacking, the opposite arm, is going to be my post. All right. So now I can slide back here, and then I just drop my hips back. Right, so I open up my knees, and I like to grab the arm if I can because I want to keep the elbow tucked tight. So from here, I just start to like sprawl forward with my hips.
So again, he starts to grab my belt, and this works really well, especially if the guy's elbows are on the inside of my leg. Like, yeah, like he feels really safe here. I don't feel as safe, but his wrist is already bent, so I'm in a good position to attack. All right, so first thing I need to do is I need to get my base. Boom. So I have my base. I spread my feet. If I feel like he's starting to push me away as I grab here, I just cross my feet underneath so that he can't get his hips out. And now I'm just going to drop my weight down. His wrist. All right. So time here, he grabs, stuck. Oh, he's starting to go, so I cross my feet. All right. So he thinks he's good. This is going to give me a little chance while we're struggling. Adjust the base, cup the elbow, and grab the sleeve, whatever. And then the important detail here is if I just go straight down, I might slip off the wrist. So when I grab here, I twist in. It's kind of like a side shift force. You guys can see on this side too. So here his elbows are in. So when I adjust my base and I block his elbow, if I just go straight down, nothing happens, right? So I have to twist in to get that tap. So. Once more. James. Yep. So if he doesn't have the belt grip, it's going to work the same, but I'm not going to have as much time to adjust. So if this is the case, I'm probably going to do it all in one motion. I'm just going to go here, and then I drop my hips. So notice what I did. This one's a little bit of a variation. Is when his hands are just here, I'm going to at one time jump one arm back to cup his elbow and one arm over. And then on this one, I actually lift up on his elbow because he's not locked in. So when I go, boom, I come to here, I lift on his elbow as I sink my hips down, and I go. So that's kind of the no-gi variation, right? But that one you're not going to have as much time. When the guy's tied up, he doesn't want to let go. So I have the time to adjust, and I also have to be more careful because he's going to be able to move me better. So either way you prefer. One last time. Drop my wrist. Here. Make my crutch. Alright, let's give it a try. 1, 2, 3. When I'm doing a twist, like, I have to get my hips low. Yeah. So my hips aren't low, no matter how far I twist, like he's not really locked in. So when I base, and I just block his elbow from moving, now my hips go low, and I twist. In this case, there, like I can tell that I didn't have it. So I can always adjust up and start to work. And from here, so like if I feel like it's not there, like it's okay, I can move on, right? So it's gonna depend on what I'm feeling. Yeah, and from that one it's gonna be really fast. Right? Just come down, and again I just kind of drop my weight and I twist it. But if the guy, like this works really well when the hands are on your hips. If the belt starts getting high, right, you're not gonna be able to get the pressure down. And so you can do another one. You can just pull up on the elbow, or you can fish under the arm, or do any other wrist lock to deal with that. Waist or not. Okay. So, cool. And this is kind of a cool setup that a lot of people don't suspect. So I'm here. I've got my seatbelt. Doesn't matter if I'm laying back or not, but for the purposes of here, we'll start in this position. So typically what happens is the guy we start doing some hand fighting here, right? And what I want is this. I just want to get control of his arm. We like this position a lot. We know we usually want to fall to the choke side. So this is going to kind of trick the guy a little bit. But we like this position because you can start to stuff the hand and trap arms and do different things like that. So this is probably a hand grip we're used to. So the adjustment we're going to make when we're here is however I need to get it, I'm going to get to here, and I'm just going to slide up from the wrist to the meaty part of the hand. I'm just going to be here. Now, I'm going to trick the guy because I'm going to fall to the good side for him and the bad side for me. Boom. So he's thinking, oh, I have a chance to get out, right? But now, look, I've created the bend. I have a solid grip on his hand, and the elbow stops his wrist. So now what I'm going to do is clear his head, whoop, reinforce on my own hand, and I use the mat to finish as I pull down. So again.
So we're here, I'm gonna fight through and grab the meaty part of his hand here, right? So as soon as I have that control, I feel pretty good. I'm gonna start to fall to the side, and he's gonna start to think about escaping. That's fine. I block his head, reinforce hand on hand, and then I just pull down. Again, if you have someone that's really flexible, you can always add a little bit of a twist on the way. Seatbelt position. Control the meaty part of his hand. Here. And most people don't suspect anything from this. They think you're just peeling a grip. Then they start getting excited. You fall to the side that's good for their escape, and they think, oh, I'm going to get out. I'm going to get out. I'm going to get out. No, you're not. Just that. All right. We got it. Let's give it a try. 1, 2, 3. We've gone through standing wrist locks. We've gone through passing guard, from the guard, half guard, mount, rear mount. So wrist locks are everywhere. You guys kind of saw that in the obvious ones, like from omoplatas and arm bars and things like that. But there's nothing worse than going to like a class like this and you learn all these cool wrist locks and then you get wrist locked. So we need to talk a little bit about how not to get wrist locked. And I'm just going to talk about a few of the highest percentage positions we were in and what to do to avoid those wrist locks. So from standing, it's the exact opposite principles that we talked about before. For a wrist lock to work, he's got to create a bend in my wrist, and he's got to make a stop either at my shoulder or my elbow, right? So at this point, I'm probably tapping, right? So here's a little trick you can do when you're grip fighting at the beginning. As I said, the wrist locks work well when I'm mid-chest. So if I grip high, it's going to be really hard for him to create any sort of a bend or have any leverage on my arm. So the gripping point that I like is right above the collarbone. I still have good control of his upper body. If you're into judo, you can still do kazushi and things like that, but it's going to make it harder for him to wrist lock me because there's really nothing he can stop against, right? The other thing you can do is you can come low, but this doesn't give you a lot of control over the upper body. It's going to be hard to throw. So as you're gripping, remember either above, like kind of collarbone, or below. That's your safe zone. If you're in the chest region, this doesn't matter if I'm in his half guard and I'm reaching or wherever you are, like this is the danger zone for the wrist lock. And same for you, if the guy's gripping you and he's not in that zone, don't waste your time giving away your secret. He may not know you know wrist locks yet. So if he's not in that zone, you know it's not gonna work. There's no reason to go for it. So that's a common scenario. Let's talk about when I'm inside control. We said this was the highest percentage wrist lock. Is when guys are up in here and we get wrist locked here. So the way to avoid this, you can do a couple different things. Some people really like to just plant their hand on their chest. Because guys that have good wrestling and stuff, you can start to work your arm underneath and get the underhook and wrestle out. I personally really like to escape by getting my frame and bridging, and that means my wrist can be in danger. So here's the adjustment. Instead of doing what everyone does by grabbing the gi or pushing here, I'm going to come all the way to his shoulder. I'm going to lock my wrist out. So he needs to create the bend, right? But his wrist isn't going to be strong enough because I'm not giving him the leverage to be close. Now he's strong, right? So he's got to fight a much longer lever, and I have a much stronger force, and he's pulling against his own shoulder, so he's helping me kind of defend. So it's a small adjustment of my hand. If I'm here, I'm probably going to get wrist locked. If I'm here, I'm going to be okay. And always remember, don't get lazy with our wrists. Like I start getting lazy, oh, he might be able to adjust. I might be in trouble. And the last one I want to talk about is the mount. So we talked about this where we start to get really tied in and our wrists naturally bend already. So like Mr. Miyagi says, better no be there, right? So if I'm doing this, I have to know that the wrist lock's available. I think recognition is a really big thing in defense. So if I do this, I've got to go right away. And if I'm going to do the belt escape, what I like to do is I like to drive my knuckles in. So that's a little bit harder for him to create the bend. Now this puts me in a slightly less positionally sound spot because my elbows are out, but I'm going to go right away. The other thing is we just do this traditional
snake escape and things like that. So you just need to be aware that this is here, and if the guy's fast, he's gonna go for it. So don't just get lazy and rest. Yeah, I'm late, I'm gonna be in trouble, it's gonna be a fight, right? So when it's time to go, I'm gonna be here, maybe I'm working, things are not working, go right away. And then I let go. Yeah, and I don't get lazy with my hand here, because now I'm in trouble, right? But again, even with this one, and you guys saw, when you ride up, it gets worse, right? So as he starts to come here, I can plant my hand to the mat. So the natural defense that we were all doing, so we get lazy here, right? We're just sitting, and this wrist lock's available. If I go straight up, it makes it worse, right? So what I'm gonna do instead is I just change, I put my hand on the mat. He might still pass my guard, but he's not gonna wrist lock. So I'm gonna take the energy he's giving me, I'm just gonna go down. I took away the bend, I took away the stop, the wrist lock's gone, right? So those are probably the sneakiest, and I think coolest wrist locks that we did today. Those are the secrets that you're not gonna tell your friends, right? But I don't want you guys getting caught in those spots. So be aware, you know where the wrist locks are, and if you feel yourself starting to get caught, take away the bend, take away the stop, reset, and you'll be safe.